Good day, one and all. I can, I was going to say I can read with the best of them, but let's not, overstate it. I can read. In the bulletin today, as you will see in the later service, or if you've already seen, we introduced the fact that we have some special guests here today. And I'm going to defer to Betsy in a moment to introduce Sunel Phillips and Mimi Graves, and a couple of others who are here whose names I don't know, and Betsy will tell you as much as we want to tell you about them.
Okay, welcome to everybody, and we're delighted to have you here, and we're delighted to have our guests here with us this morning. These people together have done an amazing, amazing job over the last several years. Their first obra was published in 2012, which had taken several years to get prepared, I think. So we have two of the people responsible for pulling it together, and Sunel here, who I'm just about to introduce, is the one who basically did all the interviews for the stories, of which you see just a little sampling here. And we're hoping that even if you went to the 8 o'clock service, you will come, at least stick your heads in at St. Helens to see what the rest of it looks like, because there are a lot more of these stories and photos, and we're hearing about the journeys of people here in our own community. A couple, two or three I thought, were here today. Two? Okay. And they're going to be sharing something of their own stories, as well as hearing about the whole process that put it together. So we're delighted to have, and I will just introduce Sunel, and she will come and introduce the rest of her crew, and we'll go from there. So thank you for coming, and please don't miss the rest of it at St. Helens. And while you're there, you can stay for the service if you want. Okay. Welcome.
So I'm Sunel Phillips, and I got really nervous when I came in because I just saw these three, which are wonderful to have because they are the two of them are the women that, yes, well, obviously the cutest, but also the women that we're having speak this morning. But yeah, I really do encourage you to go see the others that are on the other side, because I'm going to refer to a number of them this morning. That's why I was nervous, because I thought, oh, I was going to talk about that one in point, but it's not here. So anyway, again, I'm Sunel Phillips. And I've lived in Bend for about 12 years, and about, I guess it's been 6 years ago, I got a call from Mimi Graves, who is our other person who's here today, who worked for, as we were both volunteers for, the Latino Community Association. And Mimi says, we keep having all these people come in and saying, telling us their stories. We've really got to get these stories down. And I'm a Spanish interpreter. I work for the courts principally. I'm a certified state or of Oregon Spanish interpreter. So I was the interpreter for the project, and we had a woman who had lots of contacts within the Latino community who was able to get a number of our first families and individuals lined up for us to interview and to write about. The person who was going to do the writing was one of the editors for, the High Desert Journal. It turned out that she was so busy with her other responsibilities that I kind of meekly said, well, I can kind of write. I'll write one of the stories and see what you think. And then when I did, she said, okay, you're good to go. You can write the story. So Mimi and I actually interviewed a number of the families together. Some of the individuals were undocumented, some were in the process of getting their documentation. Others were from mixed documented families where perhaps one person was a U.S. citizen, another had a green card. Children, most of the children involved in all these stories were U.S. citizens because they were born in the United States. There were a few, as you will meet today, that were born in Mexico but came to this country very, very young. So it was a whole range of individuals and amazing, amazing, moving stories. I want to tell you a little bit more about just the logistics of how we did it and the kind, what the stories were about and why we did it. We wanted to get down, we wanted to hear people's stories first of all. A lot of the individuals that we interviewed were Spanish speaking, they did not speak English. A few were also English speaking, but because of that, often people don't know what happened to them, a lot of the dominant culture. They don't know how these individuals got here or what's going on in their lives after they've been here. So we really wanted to give a voice to those stories and to hear them and have them heard and know that we are really paying attention. Then we wanted to be able to communicate those stories to the rest of the community and to educate people. Education was really our principal goal. We were not trying to necessarily persuade people one way or the other. Of course, we had our own feelings and opinions and so forth, but we really just wanted people to understand what was going on and how the headlines of the day actually intersected with individual people's lives and have impacted those lives profoundly. For instance, at the time that we were doing these stories was just about the time that our past governor, Kulongoski, decided to end the ability to get a driver's license without a Social Security card. This affected families tremendously. They no longer could drive legally, obviously. They couldn't, or they had to drive illegally, if you want to call it that, to get their children to school, to get them to the hospital, to go grocery shopping, to get to a doctor's visit, to get to work on a daily basis so they could continue to support their families. So not having a driver's license, just that one change, changed people's lives for the very, very long term. It was very, very devastating in many cases. And it results even today with people being stopped, driving, uninsured, driving without a license, having to pay very, very steep fines, which of course then impacts their ability again to provide for their families and do the other things they need to do. So just that one thing. One of the stories was about a woman who came here basically because she had worked in Mexico and Central Mexico harvesting corn. But when NAFTA came about, Mexico was flooded with U.S. subsidized corn that was actually cheaper than could be produced in Mexico, which is hard for us to believe because obviously the labor costs are much lower in Mexico. But because the U.S. government subsidized those corn prices, and that was part of what was allowed to happen through NAFTA, it actually destroyed much of the corn economy, if you want to call it that, industry in Mexico, and actually created a lot of the immigration that happened after that, because these people no longer could find work. Can I go away? In their own areas, in their own hometowns. I don't know what happened.
Is this censorship yet? Or I'm hearing complaints it's too loud, so I'm just trying to watch it. It's already turned down.
I could just.
Fine, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Okay. So anyway, I don't know. Anyway, so that story was really her immigration was because of policies that went into place through NAFTA. There were in that time also we were hearing about a lot of violence on the border and also within towns due to drug violence. Of course, that drug demand was mostly on this side of the border, and so many lives were impacted by that. Their children were being recruited by gangs or threatened by gangs, or they themselves were. And so again, that created a lot of the immigration that happened because they were afraid to go out, they were afraid to go to school, they were afraid to go apply for a job, because in places like Juarez at the time, young women would go to apply for a job and never come home again. And so that created enormous fear. And so again, some of the families that we interviewed, that was the reason that they moved into the United States. One family had tourist visas where they lived in Juarez, so they had visas where they could go back and forth to shop. It was some sort of a special permit. And so they crossed having that visa, and then they decided to stay because it was just too threatening in the neighborhood where they were living. So all of those headlines that we hear on the national news are not just something you read about in the daily lives of many of the Latinos that live in our community. People that are our neighbors, that are our children's friends, that are building our homes, that are serving us in restaurants, that are feeding, that are producing our food, that are interpreting for other residents in hospitals and in legal situations, people that are cleaning the hotels, that run our fuel, our tourist industry, all of these things that are really, really fundamental to life in Central Oregon. Much of that labor is being provided for by our Latino neighbors. And so, we felt like it was super important for people to get to know these faces and to know these stories more than just sort of a dim, vague, maybe figure. For instance, at the time that we did the original stories, I believe there was a little over 7,000 Latinos in Douglas, in the Bend area. The population of Latinos in the state of Oregon has grown at a tremendous rate over the last 10 to 15 years at a much higher rate. And you can read the specifics right here. I won't try to quote it because I will misquote it, but compared to the growth rate among other populations. And so they've become even a bigger part and more important part of our community and our culture and the values that we share with one another. Let's see. Our original team was, I did most of the writing on the original stories, and I did the writing on 3 recent stories. But one thing that was great that happened is that the Rural Organizing Project, that does a lot of justice kinds of events and project and organizing in rural Oregon, picked up, well, they called one day and they said, you know, we're looking to write some stories about Latinos, and we were wondering if you would be interested in helping us with that. And I said, well, actually, we've done that. And they're really, well, send those to us and we'll see what we think. And we sent them and they went, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we were planning on doing. Could we have this, you know, make this into an exhibit that would go around the state and appear in other communities and provide, you know, an educational outlet on what's going on in the lives of Latinos? And we said, well, of course you can. At that point, it had been involved in the Art Walk. We'd had several churches that had hosted the project, including the Unitarian Universalist Church and the Methodist Church, not the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church. The library had hosted at that point, but the opportunity to have it go around the state was very exciting. And so it did. It went to McMinnville and Yamhill and Corvallis and I can't even remember, just a whole number of communities, particularly in northwestern Oregon. It made it out to Ontario and Pendleton at one point. So that was really a great opportunity. While it was traveling, we encouraged other communities, or we went and did sort of an opening presentation, to add stories from their own communities. So a couple of the stories in the ones that you will see over in the other room and across the hall at St. Helens Hall are from some of those other communities as well. I think they were from Yamhill. A couple of the stories, or one of the stories at least, was written by the individual himself, Gerardo Zuniga. You can read his story. He wrote his own story. So they're not all written by me, but they're not my story. They are the stories and the voices of those that I interviewed, or that we interviewed. Because Mimi was wonderful to have along because she would always think of better questions.
Yeah, man club.
She would think of questions that I would not even think of and got a lot more information that we wouldn't have had otherwise. That was great to have 2 people working on that. So today I want to, versus going on and having me prattle on any longer, I think it's much more important to hear the voices of 2 of the women that we interviewed more recently, because just recently the Unitarian Universalist Church came to us and said, again, we really think this, you know, issue, obviously it's been important for the last number of years, but it's very much on the minds of people again, the whole immigration reform and DACA and so forth. We would like to host it again, and we would like for you to add some stories about DACA students. So lo and behold, I was volunteering at Volunteers in Medicine, and I had fellow interpreters, and 2 of them are sitting right here today, and they are DACA students. So, or DACA, you know, they're not. You don't have to be a student to have your DACA, but they were students as well. And their names on the stories are not their real names, but they are very public, and so I'm going to refer to them as Lily, her real name, not Angela, which is her pen name, or I don't know what you would call it. And then this is Wendy, and Wendy is Anita in the story. Also, one other thing I want to mention, that these are just excerpts from the stories. The full stories are in the booklets. So if you really want to read the full stories, you have to get a booklet. And they make a lot more sense if you read the whole story, and also it just gives you so much more richness to what it says. So I encourage you to do that. I noticed that there's copies of the new ones, the 3 new ones, which are the new Borderless stories too. I'm not sure if they make copies of the original ones.
Yes, we just have 20 copies, but we can get other copies made. We weren't sure how many people would want them right now.
Right.
We will make sure that they're available.
Well, what I was going to say is we do have a sign-up list today. And even if you just come today and you just wanted to hear these stories today and that's it, we'd really love to know who you are, just to have an idea of how many people were here, and it's hard for us to keep track of that. So if you would also like, if there's not enough copies, if you could write your name down, and then under interest you could say, you know, I would like a copy of the stories. Also, if you have any interest after you hear what's going on and getting more involved, or volunteering with Latino Community Association, or with Central Oregon Neighbor Love, or one of the other organizations that's mentioned there, if you want to help some students like these young women finish their college educations and you'd like to donate to the Central Oregon Community College Foundation, those opportunities are listed over there. But we'd love to have your names to know you're here today. So first off, I'm going to introduce Lily. Lily is, how old is she? Not that it matters. 22 years old, and she's continuing her education. One day she would like to be, I think she hasn't changed her mind since last time I talked to her, either an immigration or criminal defense lawyer. And she currently is a certified medical interpreter and does quite a bit of other interpreting as well. She's in school and working at least 1 or 2 or who knows 5 jobs. It seems both of these young women are always working so many jobs I can't keep track of them. And she would love to share with you her story today and tell you a little about what DACA is, because some of you may have heard the term but not really know what DACA is, so maybe she can share with you that as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here and let's hear our stories out. I think it's very, very great of you to want to know what's going on and who we are. So I want to start off with thanking all parents. Parents are amazing. They do anything they can to support us kids. They make sure we walk out of the door with a jacket on, even though it's 79 degrees outside. They make sure that we get our driver's license to drive safe. Make sure that we learn how to drive and feed us. They make sure they get us through college to become good citizens of this beautiful country. And they cross the border when their kids don't have food to eat. This is my story. This is why my parents crossed the border. This is why my father has many scars around his body, trying to cross the border one night for over 3 days with no water. This is why my mom didn't have the opportunity to be at her mother and father's funeral, because she couldn't leave us here. Because if she would, we'd have to stay here eventually. She really wanted to go, but couldn't, because she knew that she couldn't leave her kids and that we were better off staying here. My mom is a great person, and she is not a criminal, nor is my father. They make sure, that we do things right, and that we're good citizens of Bend and of the United States. I became a DACA recipient at the age of 16, which was perfect because that's when you need to get a driver's license. You want to start, looking for a job and doing all, these things that young American kids are doing. But it was hard. When I moved to the United States, I was about 4 years old. I don't remember much. And it's in the story. I remember me being in a cab with a driver, and he was telling me to be quiet. And I remember there was this big pot, or this huge thing, right next to me and kept trying to cover me. I don't know what it was. And I told my mom about it, but she claims that I was never in a cab and I was never next to a huge pot. And I was like, well, how do you know that? You weren't even with me when I crossed the border. She went another way. So I crossed the border on my own at the age of 5. Well, I remember that. So I asked her, how do you know that? You were not even with me. Well, Mama knows best. That's what she, how do you argue? Yeah, so you're going to see that in the story. And I didn't find out that wasn't true until the story came out, or else I would have told Sunel not that. So that's not true, apparently, according to my mom. Well, DACA has changed my life. DACA gave me the opportunity, like I said, to get a driver's license, to get a job, to be able to go to college, which I really wanted to. At the age of 5, seeing your parents go through what they went through, making sure they have food on the table every day, making sure, they have a nice home for their kids, and a nice warm bed to sleep. I feel like the least that I can do is seek for a better education, kind of pay them back for what they did. So yes, I've had DACA for a few years now, and it's really changed my life. It's the most amazing thing that has happened to me, besides coming to the United States. And even with DACA, we still have limitations. I think one of the biggest limitations is not being able to travel, because my grandparents, do live down in Mexico. And my grandmother comes and visits us every year, but my grandfather doesn't. He doesn't have a visa, first off, to come to the United States. And he doesn't want to, for some reason. I'm not sure why. And I haven't met my grandfather. We only talk over the phone. That's the only resource there is. Of course, there's Skype and all these fancy things, but they're 65, 70 years old. Very,
very, very old.
Yeah. I don't have to say it. Well, yeah, so I haven't met him. And I really wanted to go, when we had the opportunity to fly out of the United States for humanitarian reasons, which is what they call it. I didn't. I was too scared. But another one of the limitations is that we can't do what we want. So I'm going to give you an example. My sister, she wanted to be a cosmetologist or makeup artist. And Fagan's, as you guys know, Fagan's is here in town. Well, she was ready. She was ready to go into Fagan's. She knew that she had to pay out of pocket because she wasn't eligible for any financial aid or anything like that. She had the money ready to go. She had everything. Her English is perfect, just like mine. And she learned how to do makeup off of YouTube videos. So she's very talented with that. Well, she was all ready to go, and then she receives a call one day from a Fagan's staff member. They scheduled an appointment for her because they wanted to talk to her about something. Well, she goes into Fagan's, right? She's all excited, ready to go. I took her in that day, and she walks out, and she walked out crying. And my sister is a very strong person, and I freaked out. I was like, "Well, what's going on?" She was all excited when she walked in there, and she walks out crying. Well, Fagan's didn't want her to. She couldn't register for Fagan's because she was a DACA recipient, because she wasn't a citizen, because she wasn't a resident. So it just broke my heart because now all she's doing is working because she doesn't want to do anything else. She wanted to be a makeup artist, but she wasn't allowed to. So she comes into the car and tells me, "Do you know how ridiculous it is to live in this country, to grow up in this country, to be here for her whole life, because she came to the United States when she was like 1, and not be able to do what you want, to not have that one document that gives you the opportunity to be whatever you want." It broke my heart. DACA is amazing. It is. And I'm very grateful for it. But I think that we need more than DACA. I think we need citizenship or something else. Because we are Americans. I consider myself an American. I've lived here, like I said, for over 15, 16 years. And I love this country. I love the people. And I know that my parents might have done something illegal, but I know that they did it for a reason. Just like your ancestors did, like my ancestors did, like like people are still doing it. And it's all because of a better future. Who can blame a parent who does something for their kids' well-being? I want to thank you guys for being here and listening to me rant about my stuff. And I want to tell you guys, well, now I am a medical interpreter. I have 3 jobs right now. Plus, I volunteer and go to school. But I absolutely love it. I love volunteering. I love my jobs. I love going to school. I think education is very important. I thank my parents for giving me a great education here in the States, even if it's very expensive. But thank you guys, and I hope that this has changed your mind a little, and that you guys liked what I had to say.
Thanks so much. I mean, it's really amazing to me that these young women are willing to get up and share their stories, knowing that they are vulnerable, some members of their families are vulnerable, and so forth with all of you. So I hope that you will, really understand how courageous and strong they are. I'm going to have to leave in about 3 minutes, but this is not over. So I just want to make sure I didn't have to stand up here behind Wendy and get my purse and leave while she was talking, so I want to mention that now. I'm actually leading a group to Guatemala in June, and we're getting blessed today at First Presbyterian Church, so I have to be there for that. So anyway, that's the reason I'm going. So anyway. No, it's not because I don't love all of you. That's, Anyway, next we're going to have Wendy, and she also has a great story and a great heart, and she is an amazing hard worker, and she's been able to really get involved as an activist over this last year and a half, almost 2 years now, I think. Even got to go to Washington, D.C. She can tell you what reason. Oh, I don't know what she has in mind telling you, but maybe now she'll tell you about that. And anyway, so thank you again for being here, and don't forget to sign up, and Mimi's going to close at the end. And also, if you have questions and answers, and if there's quick questions and no answers, and if there's some time, then you can ask these three wonderful people anything else you want to know. So thank you for being here, and I'll hand it over to Wendy.
Okay. All right. So my name is Wendy, or Anita in this story. So I'll start off real fast on what DACA is. DACA stands for Defer Action for Childhood.
You need to put the mic up to your mouth. Thank you.
I use the mic? Okay. So again, DACA stands for Defer Actions for Childhood Arrivals. This was something established by Obama in 2012, which made anybody of the age of 16, at the age of 16, eligible to apply for a work permit and a social security number that came with your work permit. And you had to be able to apply and had certain restrictions. You either had to be in school or working, and you could not have had any kind of issues with the police or law enforcement or pretty much any kind of trouble, because you would get a background check. Part of this process requires fingerprints, biometrics, and absolutely complete disclosure of everything: family, address, places where you even crossed the border if you happen to know that information. So I think it was really in depth of how open we had to be as soon as this permit was given to us in 2012. And this permit, it took a while to get here. For anybody at that time in 2000, after pretty much 1996 or 86, might have been. I have my dates all wrong now. But the permit took a lot of work from people like me who did not have as much of a chance as I do right now at the age of 16, at the age of 18 at the time for many of them. Because they graduated high school and weren't able to go to college and were a lot more limited before 2012, and these were high school graduates, college graduates who couldn't go to work, couldn't use their diploma, and marched, sent letters and did rallies and became advocates in their community and marched from Florida to DC. And that was years of work before 2012 came around. And Obama was pressured enough. It's not like he woke up one day and said, I'm going to do this for all dreamers because I think it's a smart thing. It was work. It was letters. It was phone calls. It was pretty much a different version of what we're doing now. Just now, a lot of people are becoming aware that this has been going on for so long, and a lot of people are barely knowing about it. So it was in 2012. I was just getting out of high school. So I hadn't been able to get my license at 16. I had to tell all my friends that my parents didn't want me to get my license until they thought I was responsible enough at 18. So I was like, I'll just keep pushing it back 2 years, every 2 years. And so none of my friends knew my situation up until, honestly, very recently when I had a trip to DC. And I've been here since I was 7 years old. Started off in Redmond, same address, same street, still there. Went to Lynch Elementary, Obsidian Middle School, graduated out of Redmond High School. Grew up with you know, the same group of people, and the same group of people were informed of so much of my life by one post when I got to go to DC last time in the fall, and I went right after they removed DACA. If you guys remember that there was a big thing back in September, that Tuesday that they removed DACA, they said that it was going to be a canceled thing. And my visa expires in January of 2019, so I have months left. I can now reapply, so I still can extend it for 2 years. And I have time to do that unless here's hoping nothing changes up until October for me, or something gets phased. I lost my train of thought. So I'm like, oh, I really got to get to that. It's October, so close now. But, you know, I grew up with this group of people that didn't really know much about my life, and I was their friend, like their best friend for many of them. And, you know, I've known them since I was in since I was 7 years old. And I learned a lot growing up, like almost as a double life, where I knew that there was a lot of information I couldn't disclose to everybody at a very young age. That there were certain people I couldn't talk to all the time, and certain things I couldn't say. Whew. It always sounds a lot clearer in my head, and then I come up here. But it's been quite interesting seeing how hard my parents work every day and how they've always done that, and then seeing a lot of this version being able to be an educated individual because of how hard they work. Now at 23, I'm in college, I'm over at OSU. So I've had the opportunity to really evolve as an educated human being in the States. And it has helped me realize that all this work that they're doing, I value it. But when it comes in terms of politics and the word immigration and how that gets thrown around, it doesn't apply to my parents. I don't see it applying to my parents other than the fact that we moved here, we migrated here. And for me, that change was not that big at the time because I was 7 years old. For my siblings, some of them came at 18, 19, and they weren't able to apply for the DACA because you had to enter the country before the age of 16 to be able to apply for this. If you were at the time of 2012, if you were over 30 years old, you were automatically not able to establish. So it was a very select group of people who were able to get this permit. Very select. And in order to keep it, you had to stay either working and with no problems or in school with no problems. And this permit only allows you to work. No financial aid, nothing. Every paperwork that you are able to get or fill out, you have to set out or write out when your expiration date is. Because we have an expiration date to be here. So it's interesting to show my visa to, or not it's not a visa. Visa allows you to come in and go. This doesn't. This is just a work permit. That's all I'm allowed to do. And with that, I can drive because I got to get to work somehow. So a lot of people get shocked the fact that all my documentation that has an expiration date from my license, from my social security card, from my permit, from any paperwork I fill out for a job, I have to give them a heads up, like, hey, by the way, I might have to leave in like January. But you know, it's been a blessing having DACA and the fact that I was able to get it right out of high school, so really be able to enjoy a freedom of choice, you know, and the freedom to be able to drive and to be able to travel in a car. I got to travel all through the states, across the country, with the security of a driver's license. Something my parents don't have and weren't able to have after their license was expired, and I believe 2008 was the last one. They've been just driving cautiously, very cautiously, like they did before. My dad's never gotten a ticket, never gotten pulled over, maybe once by like a flat tire or something. But you know, he's that kind of person who's never gotten a ticket, never gotten pulled over, and to this day he's able to still drive cautiously because, you know, you don't forget how to drive you don't have a license. So it's been a blessing to have DACA, but it took us a lot to get to DACA, for it to be taken away very fast the way it did, and for it to be turned out to the way it sounds like it is now. Because now you hear DACA and you also hear things like they're getting all their financial aid covered, they're getting all the health care covered, like this is what DACA is, this is what DACA is giving. And that comes a lot with like how well educated we want to be about certain topics. And with politics, it's so hard, and with immigration, it's so hard because unless you're living it, or you are exposed to it, you know about it, you don't just go like, oh, what's the new immigration law today, this morning? You know, it's not your everyday, and that makes sense, which is why it's so easy to get influenced by the wrong connotation, the wrong information that comes with the word DACA and immigrant and Latinos and Hispanics and even the word Spanish and Spanish words and all that. And it's has turned so much in the last, like they said, 16 years. Well, I guess it's 16 years that I've been in this country. I remember coming here and being one of the only Latino families at church, you know, at school, in conferences. I was my parents' interpreter when I was like 9. And if I wanted to, you know, middle school, if I wanted to tell my parents that I skipped school, not that I ever did. I did once in high school, on senior skip day. I was a really good kid, you know. I was in the IB program, and I valued education a lot because I saw how hard my parents worked and how much they'd always tell us, like, we didn't get the chance to go to school, and you do, so go. So, and my dad always wanted to go to school, but he had to work. He came from a large family, a poor family, and his parents weren't as invested in his education as they were on him making him a good man and a hardworking man. That's what they expected of him, and that's what he became, good, hardworking man. But he wanted to go to school, but he didn't get the resources for it. So for him to give me everything, it's a lot. But they all value education a lot. My mom finished her nursing degree with 2 kids in her elementary school within the same 2 years that she decided to get everything. Because she also wasn't able to finish her middle school or high school, and my dad didn't. So their focus on education for all of us was very set. And that's definitely something that the knowledge that we get from life, from school, is something that people can't take away. It's something that not everybody needs to understand or get, but it's something that can never be taken away. It's something that's ours. So going to school, I'm going. Going to school and becoming very active in my community. I volunteered in medicine, which was a clinic that helped my parents when we first moved to the States. So now I'm there once a week interpreting, just like someone did for my parents a long, long time ago. People who still are there, because we just had an award ceremony for people who have been there 10 years, 15 years, you know, like dedicated people to the community. And so all I've learned, all I've been able to have with this permit and just being an immigrant in this country is just keep thriving forward. We're here now. We might not be able to stay, but immigration isn't going to end. We're just one block of people that they thought, and I do, by they I mean like immigration, or just how immigration flows essentially, that they thought we were going to leave. That the children weren't ever going to come and stay here, that the families who were going to come were eventually going to return home. And that's true for a lot of our parents. A lot of our parents still dream of going back home. I feel like this gets harder every time. And like I said, I've been doing this for a while now. I got the chance to go to DC and talk about my story, which was an interesting experience because I never thought that one, I'd get a paid trip somewhere, anywhere. Two, that it'd be to the nation's capital for, you know, like people who are representing our state, people who this is their career and their life and everything. And then having to go and prove my value. So, yeah, it gets a little harder as we go. It keeps getting a little harder. And the goal is to get something stable, or at least a path to something stable. You know, just as limited as this permit was, where you couldn't be in trouble before, you couldn't get it, that simple. Something like that. This doesn't allow, this is just a 2-year renewal process that can be taken away just as easy as it was and put back just as easy as it was, but still nothing stable. Too easy to stay, too easy to go. And we still can't do much with it. And it took us a long time to get this, but we need more. Some sort of way to, maybe not everybody wants to stay. Maybe some people want to study here and leave later. Some people don't even want to study here. You know, but make it an option for the people who can apply, for the people who see a future here. For the people who can do that, make it an option. Because it is too difficult right now with that guy, a 2-year renewal, to feel like I can establish a future here and get my education here, because I might not be able to do it. So why, you know, why stay here? Why keep talented young people here? You know, kind of thing. So thank you for taking your time and walking through this with me. Yeah, so my sister is right here. Nancy, you can raise your hand. I'll do a quick rundown of her story because it's just much more interesting. So she left in 2011. She was 19 years old, decided that college here wasn't an option right after high school because she couldn't get financial aid. And so she, or her dream, yeah, exactly. Maybe you can come up here and tell the story. She wanted to go to the Marines, but pretty much got turned down because she didn't have a social security number.
And my parents didn't sign the contract because I was 17.
Needed parents' permission. So this is Nancy.
Hi. Thank you. This was not part of the plan. I'm not on the photo shoot either. But yeah, I was 17 when I wanted to join Marine Corps, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have a social or my parents' authorization. And so I finished high school and I took off. I went back to the place where I was born, and I started college, which it turned out great. I didn't plan anything. It worked out great for non-planning. So I went to college, 4-year college in Mexico. My parents helped me out by paying in dollars, 2 pesos, which became cheaper. I was going to a private school. I was getting to know all these people that were going to school with me. I went to school for journalism and science of communication. So I wanted to do that to become a speaker for all of these people. It turned out great. I finished college in 2014. I got a chance to get a student visa for a photography course in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which it was the first time that I came back legally. The immigration doesn't know I was here, that I grew up here. And it was a lot of lying in my process, but at the end I ended up coming legally, and everything got smoother after then. Now I go back and forth. I have a 10-year visa. I'm not allowed to work here. I'm not allowed to stay here more than 6 months. Every time I come to the country, I have to prove to immigration that I'm not going to stay, that I have enough money, and that I'm going to leave the country by the time they tell me they stamp my passport. So it is a process. It turned out great for me. I ended up going to school with no student loans. Everything's paid. I just got paid my school yesterday, so I'll be getting my certificate soon. And at some point, I was just like these two little girls, but with different chances. I didn't know what to do. My parents, like she said, didn't have that college education, so I didn't know, I couldn't recruit to them for college help or even high school help. I was the first one to graduate high school out of my family, and I'm the middle child. So I just thought I was gonna waste my time here getting a 9-to-5 job, and I just packed my things, moved to Mexico, came back 4 years after. Now I got married. I met a gentleman when I was visiting my parents in summer 2015. He's a citizen. He really liked me. And I was here like a summer, and I told him, I was like, you know what, I don't live here. I live in Mexico, so I'm gonna go back. And a month after, he visited, and 3 years later, we got married. So now I'm going through all of that, and hopefully we'll move to Mexico.
So it looks like we're getting the time signal, and we're here to answer questions. I'm just the organizer, not the talent, but if you want to get involved, you have to get to know the people, and the best way to do that is by volunteering at the Latino Community Association. You can do that online, or you can go in, and you might be a volunteer tutor. So the best way to learn English is to go to class at the college, but people work 3 or 4 jobs, can't do that. So we mentor people one-on-one, just read with them, we'll give you materials, and you don't have to have any skills, you don't have to know Spanish, it's better if you don't. And you become friends, and you can help them with their questions. Another thing that we do is accompany people. Recently I went to the courthouse with some young girl who was asking for a, what's it called? Protection order. Restraining order against her neighbor 2 doors down in an apartment. And I'm not a very good Spanish speaker. And all I did was just pick her up, pick her mom up, sat there. And it just gave her incredible strength to know that someone was with her. That's all I did. But if you want to help, you probably should get educated in that way by hanging out. So any questions you have, I'm sure most of them are for them. We have a few minutes.
Well, thank you very much for taking your time and hearing us all out. Feel free to read the stories. Do read the stories. Do get to know us. We are your neighbors. We've been here. You are our neighbors, and we'd like to get to know you too. It's a two-way street, always. So thank you.